in 2013, the Prince of Liechtenstein, you know his name, of course.
Prince Otto? Prince.
It's got to be Otto. I am Otto von Liechtenstein.
Of course.
So in 2013, he bought a painting. It was a painting done in 1531 called Venus by a German Renaissance master, Lucas Cranach the Elder.
Wait.
Lucas Cranach the Elder was the name of the artist.
Okay.
1500.
It's always, if you're a famous artist and over time you come to be known as the Elder, it really says that your kid went on to do better things. Like
the same thing.
Yeah, but you're Lucas
Pitt the Elder
Cranach.
and Pitt the Younger, they were just both prime ministers.
Yeah, Pitt the Elder is the failed. Like no one cares for Pitt the Elder. Pitt the Younger is the good one.
Cranach apparently, I don't know if his children went on to be artists, but this painting in 2013 sold for £6 million. So that's not bad.
Okay.
I mean, Liechtenstein, that's probably just straight out of petty cash. But anyway. Then in 2015, so 2 years later, this painting was the star of a show, an exhibition of this art of Cranach the Elder's work at a gallery in Aix-en-Provence.
Give me a picture. What does Cranach the Elder paint? Like, it feels to me
Venus, I assume, is a picture of the planet.
Oh, okay.
No, it would be the
lady, the god lady.
It'd be the statue or otherwise,
okay. All right. But it's traditional Renaissance sort of stuff.
Traditional Renaissance stuff.
I just, my art history, I've never heard of Cranach the Elder.
Oh my God. There are so many artists I've not heard of. And occasionally I see a painting and go, fuck, that looks familiar. And you say, it's by Schmichtenstein the Ninth. And you're like, no, it's not.
I know all of Schmichtenstein the Ninth's works.
I know, but I know there are only artists. There's Renoir, there's Monet, and there's the Munch the Scream. That's it. Oh, Van Gogh, obviously, I love him. So anyway, in 2015, this artwork, Venus, was the star of an exhibition at a gallery in Aix-en-Provence. Apparently it was on the cover of the catalogue. It was the thing to come and see.
Yeah, you put that one right up the end of the gallery. So people have to walk past all of the shitty ones first, going, yep, got it.
Like the supermarket, the milk's at the back. You've got to walk past all the crap before you get where you really came from.
I like the idea that the star art exhibition, the Van Gogh sunflowers, is the equivalent of the milk at the back of the supermarket.
Yeah, everyone wants it, but they've got to work for it. You've got to look at all the other garbage by students and stuff. But then, so there it was. Then there was an anonymous tip to the police force that said, actually, it's a fake.
Oh, okay.
So the French police turned up and seized the painting. So that kind of ruined the exhibition a little bit.
They didn't wait till the end?
No. Straight away. The moment they heard. The painting been put on the market by a French collector, a guy called Giuliano Ruffini. He says, putting on his best Italian accent.
Yeah, I don't know why he did that.
Because Giuliano Ruffini does not sound like a French name to me.
Still, it's his choice.
Giuliano Ruffini. There we go. Yeah. And its seizure was the first. The seizure of this painting flagged concerns about a string of impeccable fakes that had been done by master forgers all over the shop. Like this kind of was the domino that people went, holy fuck. And so it turned out Ruffini, this collector, had sold at least 25 works for upwards of about 180 million pounds.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. I
know. You're like, oh, that's a fair bit. In today's dollars, that would be about 180 million pounds. So now there were doubts over all the works that he'd sold. And the authenticity of 4 in particular was contested, the Venus and 3 others. So there's an art historian called Bendor Grosvenor who said, look, it might turn out to be the best old master fakes the world has ever seen, some of these paintings that Ruffini had been putting out. Ruffini goes, come on, I didn't know what I was doing. He was talking to the art newspaper.
Wait. I didn't know what I was doing?
He was like, well, I didn't know this. He says, I'm a collector, not an expert. I'm a collector, I'm not an expert.
Oh, is he the middleman? So he's the middleman. He is not...
Just the middleman.
He's not the painter of these fakes.
He's the collector.
So there's this guy that keeps coming up to me and saying, I got a new...
What?
Yeah, okay.
I got this Grandmaster, $8. Okay, 10, fuck it, and a can of beer, like... Yeah. So that was Ruffini's defense. And now the quality of these paintings, because they were such good forgeries, freaked out the high-end art market, like freaked them the hell out because the sums of money were huge. We're talking tens to hundreds of millions of pounds.
That is awesome. That is so good.
Yeah, like everyone
I just got to say, I love art. I think art is awesome. It's great. But I also love any moment when high art owners get a little bit of comeuppance because I got a little bit of, I don't like the rich that much. So,
I'm going to make you feel bad later.
oh,
But for people listening at home who have been worried about our negative stories, this one's not that negative. I wouldn't say positive, but it's more interesting. Let's call it food for thought. So we're talking about huge amounts of money. So in the 80s, the mid 80s, the highest auction price for a painting was 10.4 million US, paid by the J. Paul Getty Museum for a painting by Andrea Mantegna's Adoration of the Magi. We all know, Mantegna's work. It's obviously something you and I talk about quite regularly when we're not recording.
That's on our other podcast.
It is the Mantegna Fetishists Fan Club podcast. And more recently, so this is in the 80s. So in 2017, there was $450 million was paid, 450. So we've gone from 10 million to 450 for Leonardo da Vinci's Salvatore Mundi.
So what was that? What year was this? Last year?
This is 2017. So
2017. So, okay. So over 40 years, 30 years, something like that, we've gone from 10 million US to 450 million US.
Yeah, we've gone up a lot. So this one apparently is a bit of an outlier. It's a bit higher than usual, but they're saying nowadays abstract expressionist and impressionist pictures often come through auctions and private deals with 9-figure price tags.
There will be $1 billion artwork.
I'm amazed there isn't already.
Oh, there will be. I mean, you put the Mona Lisa on the market, it'd get $1 billion.
Fuck, I'd pay that because I could sell it for 2.
Yeah, of course you could.
That's what I'd do.
In fact, you would add value. Give it 1 year, exhibition in the back of your Zoom rooms.
Let it mature.
and
put it on the side of my combi van and drive around with it.
That might not mature it, but
get noticed. It's probably not the same thing. So of course this means the incentive to be a proficient forger has soared nowadays. And the technologies to be a forger have improved out of sight. So frauds are getting better and better and better. So these days you get one good knockoff of a master's, of a nice old master painting, you're set. You can make millions of dollars, boom, job done. And this, of course, has sparked a crisis of authentication for institutions all over the art world.
Welcome to the Wholesome Show, the art podcast for science enthusiasts who set up the back of the art gallery.
I'm not going to go for art fetishist, I think. More
sure.
Yeah.
The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant.
And me, Dr. Roderick Griffin. I could have been the Mona Lisa.
Could have been the Mona Lisa. You didn't want to be Da Vinci?
Would have been the Mr. Lisa.
Mr. Lisa. Mr. Lisa.
I could have been somebody.
Come on, do your best ambiguous smile now. The Wholesome Show is brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Art.
And
Science.
forgery.
Science.
Forgery.
Science. Art. Science.
It's fair to say, if we're going to be true to the science, then awareness of forgery is probably right now bailiwick.
Oh.
Wouldn't you say?
So are you going to give me an instruction manual? Can I learn how to be a great... Yeah. If you get caught forging a painting, you don't go to jail, do you? Because it's a cool crime. It's a cool crime.
Well done. Exactly. It's like you get a monocle, a long cigar holder, and you get good on you, champ.
Cat burglar.
One of those
cat burglar.
No, one of those dapper canes where you unscrew it, it's got a shot glass in the top.
Shot glass.
You know the one.
I was thinking, I thought you were going to say like a rifle or a dagger, a cane with a shot glass in the top. What's that?
Silver one though, classy.
God damn, I can't wait to have a cane. That's going to be awesome.
I had one, but I didn't need it. And
yeah, no, you got to need it. You got to need it. You can't appropriate someone else's culture.
My grandfather's silver-topped ancient, like very spectacular cane. But I think
it's like me taking glasses with no lenses in them.
What kind of fuckwit would do that?
Exactly, they'd look awesome, but that would be appropriating your culture. So I'm not allowed to do that.
Yeah, you leave us alone. You're not our people.
Exactly.
Yet.
When I deserve it, when I've earned it, then I can have the cane with the shot glass.
Look, I briefly thought that having glasses would be kind of cool, make me seem a bit more interesting. And now that I actually need them,
I get it.
Doesn't feel as interesting.
I know. I get it.
Luckily, I'll look awesome in them.
Yes, you do.
Smiles to camera. So let's wander forward. We're going to go now from 15 to 2017. We're in Genoa, We're in Italia. So my accent comes back properly now. So in Genoa in 2017, an expert art historian concluded that at least 20 of 21 paintings in an exhibition devoted to the Italian artist Amadeo Modigliani that were on display at the Ducal Palace in Genoa were forged. 20 of 21, at least.
And the last one, we're like, that one I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm thinking at least 20 of the 21. And the last one, that one too. But I don't want to make it shocking, so make it at least. So Modigliani was apparently famous for being forged. So he was an early 20th century artist. He died
famous for being forged.
Yeah, people are really.
If you'd have
into
told
it.
me guess the age of Modigliani, I would have said Renaissance. But okay,
the past.
Why was he famous for being forged? Is he easy?
I think it was
Is he the
doable.
easiest? He's really easy.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's what I wonder. Like for some reason it was doable, and he died quite young. I think he was like 35.
Okay.
He died in the early 20th century.
There's got to be a little bit about obviously the technique. Maybe you're going to tell me this, but the plausibility of a new artwork turning up, like a new Leonardo da Vinci is it's pretty unlikely at this sort of time. But
I saw a thing today. I think it might have been in the Guardian saying they found a new little sketch from Van Gogh. The Depressed Man, or whatever it was called. It goes from complete sort of line drawing through to a painting of a guy with his head in his knees looking terribly sad, possibly a self-portrait. Unmistakably Van Gogh style. That's one style.
Now my next self-portrait, I am sad.
God, I am weary and tired of life. He did kill himself, didn't he?
Yeah, I was trying to get the Dutch accent, but I couldn't remember what it was. But yes, he did.
Oh, that's you look quite surprised. Carlo, you look very surprised and quite the spunk. Okay, that's my Danish Dutch accent. So anyway, apparently there are lots of frauds of Modigliani at the Ducal Palace in Genoa. So he was famously he apparently painted pictures with great elongated necks, did sculptures and things like this.
Okay.
And people often tried to do it. It may be because if you're more recent, you don't have to hunt down ancient techniques to forge them.
Oh, okay. It's not the paint made of eggshells and ground up semen and stuff like that.
Exactly. 17th century Pope juice. You don't have to have that anymore.
I would love to paint with some Pope juice, though.
Would you?
I would. I would become an artist just to paint with Pope juice if I could.
It's like, why are you at the Vatican? I want some Pope juice.
Excuse me. May I have some?
Hello, mister. I am Mr. Lisa.
I think there's a whole dumb it's a Benny Hill movie, a whole Benny Hill movie trying to get the Pope juice. And
I'm up for it. I've got the face size for Benny Hill. You can do the rest. So there are things like this. So 3 marble heads were fished out of a canal in Tuscany during the 1980s, and people went, holy shit, these are long-lost Modigliani masterpieces. But it turned out a local bunch of students had just made them as a prank and thrown them in the river.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I get it.
This is common. Common.
Look, I got to say that faking archaeological things and throwing them into a river or a creek, I would be. Australia obviously has an ancient archaeology, but if I lived around Rome, I would be throwing things in there all the time.
I'll be finding shit everywhere. I was just coming back from the bus and I found an ancient thing.
It's Caesar's sword.
Again, this is the 5th one that we found. So anyway, the owners of the paintings that were put on display in the Ducal Palace, of course, were pretty miffed that they were being called forgeries. So they countersued and they looked for other experts to kind of say, no, it's balls. Because we're talking millions of dollars worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And the curator of the exhibition, Rudy Chiappini, he said, look, I gather the information, the documentation that was supplied to me for every canvas. So, I looked for the provenance.
Yeah, sure.
If there have been irregularities, you need to go back to the source to whoever made the first attribution that they were from Modigliani. And I love this quote, I, until proof to the contrary, remain of the idea that the artworks are good, which is fair. Until I know otherwise.
Good doesn't mean legitimate. Anyway.
No.
Maybe.
So the show was shut down 3 days early when the prosecutors started to investigate the authenticity. One Italian art collector critic said on the TV, he described the paintings as garbage. It's pretty harsh. A consumer rights activist urged exhibition goers to seek refunds and stuff and set up a website to help them.
Oh, thanks, consumer rights activist guy. I mean,
yeah.
Okay. It's the consumers that really suffered here. I'm not to apologize for the big fat cats that own all of these artworks, but I think they're crying a little bit here that all of their hundreds of millions of pounds worth of art suddenly becomes worthless, and it's like, I want my ticket back. I want my
Yeah,
ticket back.
I want my €12 back, you sons of bitches. All right, let's do a class action. Fuck me, what a waste of time. So the ducal palace itself said, look, the private company that was responsible for the selection of the works they would seek legal protection from this company and the rights, etc. And I love on the eve of the show, the curator, Chiappini again, Rudy, said, setting up an exhibition of Amadeo Modigliani is always a new adventure, which I think that's a nice style.
Look,
hey, you don't know what's going to happen.
How many are going to be fake? Maybe one, maybe 20, maybe
20 of 21, also 21.
Look, I get it. There's a bit of a risk. If you were, you're about to set one of those exhibitions up yourself.
And you choose a guy who's been frequently forged, it would appear. So what this means is, of course, things are getting hairy. So in the same year as this situation in Genoa, the auction house Sotheby's, who I'm sure you've used quite a lot for your artworks.
I buy and sell all of my best stuff there.
Yep, ditto. So they sold in 2017 $5.5 billion worth of art, jewelry, and real estate. So that's the kind of numbers we're talking. 5.5 billion 4 years ago. And when they sell artwork, they offer a 5-year guarantee and a refund if the object proves to be counterfeit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's a modern forgery intended to deceive is the specific term.
Okay.
If it's a modern forgery intended to deceive, then
what if it's an ancient forgery?
Well, then is it a forgery?
It's
age matters.
Michelangelo da Vinci or Raphael da Vinci.
Yeah, Keith da Vinci
He painted his older brother's work. Hey, I did one too. He's a pretty good one, don't you see?
He was good, but I'm a better.
This is a Mr. Lisa. He's a lovely.
He could not paint the elbows. Look at this elbow. So it's true though. If it's 200 years old and a fake, then it sort of takes on its own kind of life.
Okay.
This notion of authenticity, you'll not be surprised to hear, sort of runs through the whole tale.
But 5-year guarantee. The 5-year guarantee.
5-year guarantee and
you get your money back. You get your money back.
Yeah. And according to the CEO of Sotheby's, he said Tad Smith.
This is Sotheby's saying you can trust the artworks that that you're buying from us for 5 years, in the sense that to the best expertise available right now and probably in the next 5 years, and they've got insurance. Obviously, you get your money back.
Yep. Okay. Seems pretty reasonable. But yeah, Tad Smith, the CEO, said, look, if you looked at earning reports from a year or two back, so 2015, 2016, you see little blips here and there. And these were expenses coming from settlements, not a slew of them, but the number was small and statistically insignificant, but each one is very expensive. So they didn't get shitloads of requests for refunds, but each one they get is
they got a few
cheap.
I guess we're talking, given that the top end of this is 450 million and not many are up there, you're talking a couple that might be of the $1 million sort of mark, something like that.
Yeah.
In the millions, multi-millions, tens of millions.
Yeah, they're looking at losing millions potentially every year on this. So basically in the last few years, you can see that larger auction houses like Sotheby's are getting a bit edgy because the technology is improving. People's motivation.
The technology of faking is improving.
Yeah. The price is improving.
Photocopiers. That's the future of art forgery.
3D photocopiers.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can print the frame as well.
Put the whole lot in there. Squeeze it all.
Yeah, that's it. This is the Mona Lisa. We're printing a house for developing world countries next to it, and a couple of Mona Lisas to decorate them. So because people are starting to get edgier now, so we're talking 2017. So in 2016, in December of 2016, so just earlier the year before, Sotheby's bought a small company called Orion Analytics.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Orion Analytical.
You know this is a cool company. That's fun. I'm liking it no matter what. I don't love their name. It's okay. But it's going to be fun.
Well, look, they became the first auctioneer or auction house to have an in-house conservation and analysis unit, the first one. And that's in 2016, which that kind of surprised me. I thought that would have been around a lot longer.
Yeah, me too.
First one to be in-house. So others, of course, could outsource this.
Yeah, and maybe they consulted individual experts. You've got the World Van Gogh expert can point to this one or that one. That's a fake. That's not a fake.
Yeah. So Orion Analytical it's a conservation science lab based out of Massachusetts. And it was run almost entirely by one guy called James Martin. So Martin, let's talk a little bit about Martin. So Martin, when he was 13, his father gave him a microscope, a chemistry kit, and art lessons. The obvious combination.
It's like, I got a career for you. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you got to guess somewhere between chemistry set, microscope, and art.
What do you want to do? I want to be a race car driver.
That's great.
Can I sell these and get a car? But apparently he was really into all of it, especially the art. But he was into the science, he was into the microscopes, the whole thing, but he was particularly into the art.
That's cool.
His family lived in Baltimore, then they moved to Washington, D.C. He spent a bunch of time at the National Museum of Natural History drawing the dioramas.
Oh.
So he'd look at the dioramas, I assume, of bison being murdered by, early colonials, and he would draw these things. His father worked in Army intelligence, and he said, as a child, I'm not sure I understood what he did, but I do remember being in airports and trying to guess who was a spy. So that was a little game you play.
Everyone plays that game. I mean, sadly, we live in a not super spied corner of the world. Like, if you're
that's what they want you to think.
No, I just don't think spies spend a lot of time. I mean, I know there's spies in Canberra, but yeah, we're not like East-West Berlin, or Prague, somewhere where all sides can meet. We're not the land of the spies.
Do you get all your information about that period from like 1960s novels?
Where else would I get it from?
1970s novels. So he also apparently used to devour detective stories, and he's still into them, particularly ones by a woman called Patricia Cornwell.
Oh, nice.
And she would write about Kay Scarpetta, who's a forensic pathologist. And he was into it because he said, we both examine patients that cannot speak about their past.
Oh, nice.
I know, it's very romantic.
One because it's an artwork, and the other one because it's a dead body. Just in case, didn't get it.
Look at that. So you saw straight through it. You saw what was going on.
I saw the analogy.
Fuck, you're good at this. I'm glad you're here, because I was looking, I don't know what that means. It's very confusing. So late in his teens, he joined an art school where students were taught how to grind their own pigments, stretch their own canvases, like, from first principles, make your arts.
People do that?
Well, they did when he was a teenager. So that's pretty impressive. And for practice, he used to set up an easel at the Baltimore Museum of Art, and he would copy the works that he liked.
Okay.
So he became so good at it that once, when he was leaving with a copy of a painting he'd done, the museum director said, "Oh, are you returning that to storage?"
Oh, no. No, he didn't. No. That's a joke. See, that's a joke. That's the museum director making a joke. That's not true.
Because that frame, no chance. Is that a Smithsonian and picture of his mother's dog? And so Martin says, look, I was very good at it technically, but like most art forgers, I didn't have my own creative way of doing things. So I could copy shit, but I didn't.
Can't do the new. No. Okay, fair enough. He'd be an awesome cover band, but he'd never,
exactly
make the new songs.
Really good cover band. So he joined a conservation program, or he applied to join a conservation program at the Winter Fur Museum in Delaware. And we all know about Delaware from Wayne's World.
Well, yes.
You're in Delaware. Joe Biden's town, right?
I think so.
He applied for this program, and the portfolio he submitted included a bunch of copies of works by other painters. And according to one of the teachers there who ended up teaching him, we were just blown away. He was such a good copyist. In fact, he was almost rejected because Martin heard later on that the committee was worried that if they trained him to be a conservator and taught him all the science, he'd just be a natural forger.
Oh, but I love though that obviously the two skills are absolutely overlapping. Catch the forger or be the forger. It's very similar. Okay, so there's the hand skills in the forger.
Yep.
But you probably want to know a lot about similar sorts of things. That's so good.
Oh, you really do. Like, my father-in-law is actually a world-renowned conservator himself. Like, he's restored blue poles and all these different things. And part of his training was also to mimic.
But I guess one question here, of course, is that obviously mimicking a great master is not going to actually solve your problems, because it's very hard to go out there and say, hey, this is the Mona Lisa. That one they got in France,
photocopy.
Yeah, exactly. Or they sold it to me for not very much money, but I can give you it for a song. Yeah, you still have to come up with your new version, even if you're copying the style of the master.
Yeah, you need the provenance. But it's amazing. Some of the ones my father-in-law did, when I first saw them, I looked at him and went, fuck, that's pretty good, man. Like, who did that? And he was like, my wife says, oh, my dad did it. Like, whoa.
Does he get to keep a bit? Like if you conserve blue poles, you get to slice off a bit off the bottom, and that's yours?
He actually has had to. But I had a buddy way earlier. Like,
I would totally eat it.
Late teenager, he used to be a cleaner at the Australian National Gallery, and he'd get really stoned when he cleaned, and he put his mop handle through the corner.
No.
So it's entirely possible my father-in-law fixed it.
Oh my God.
We're not recording this, right? No one would know. So anyway, Martin, he applied for this thing and he got the position at the Winterthur Museum in Delaware. Then he went on to the Clark Art Institute, so to be a painting conservator. He set up their first conservation lab, and he used to beg, borrow, and steal equipment from chemistry departments and universities around the place. So this was in the 1990s, and the analysis apparatus were really bulky and expensive. So microscopes, spectroscopes, infrared cameras, expensive, hard to operate, big, all problematic.
Obviously now they do it all via iPhone. It's just an app.
All by iPhone.
Just what can it tell? Everything. There it is.
Yeah, it's Check My Art. You haven't used it?
Check My Art.
I know. Check My Art. And at the time in the 90s, very few museums had their own labs. Even places like the Guggenheim Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, etc., did not have their own labs.
I can't believe that they would be taking these risks. Spend a lot of money here. You want to do a little bit of due diligence.
I assume in part it was they just assumed it wasn't going bad or it would be too hard to forge, and also in part because very expensive, very large equipment.
Oh, an old boys network of trust. Like there's a whole bunch of we know them over there, and so we'll buy it from them, and not realizing there could be little cracks within that network.
One does not crime in the high art world.
Indeed.
One is a scholar and a gentle person. So apparently at the time anyway, conservators in museums rely on their feel, the touch, and they'd say things like, you'd listen to the sound of the swab on the canvas.
Oh, really?
Or feel away the pull of the swab in the varnish. So is your touchy, licky, tasty.
So
rubbing.
Van Gogh's got a certain feel, swab
lickable
feel.
quality, let's say. Yeah, swab
I get
feel,
it.
exactly.
Of course you do the licking. I mean, if you're allowed to.
Yeah. So he said a lot of conservation departments had a microscope, maybe an X-ray machine, but if they needed serious tech, like Fourier transform infrared microscopes, you know the ones.
Yeah, that's the one where you can't have aliens in the galaxy at the same time as each other.
Exactly, yes. That's the formula that they use for these microphone scopes. Scanning electron microscopes, things like that. If you wanted to use those, you had to go to labs at the Metropolitan Museum of Art or certain universities. But even if you went there, you still need an expert to interpret it. So getting the tech is not enough. So anyway, Martin's lab.
Yes. I think the idea of, okay, we've spent $1 million on our new thing that no one can drive. And you get Gary with the mop handle. See if you can push the buttons.
Check this out. It's from an electron microscope. What do you think? It looks pretty small.
I'm a little bit stoned, so...
I see dots. I've just been punching holes in blue poles and just wondering what else you're doing. So apparently Martin's lab started to assist conservators who didn't have any of their own equipment. And they do some really detailed stuff. They'd send him snippets of things and he'd analyze them and go, look, this shows that there's been some kind of weird pigment used, or if you want to try and clean this, you're not going to have any luck because this is shellac. But if it's polyurethane, here's what you ought to do. Just offer advice, etc.
Yeah.
So he very quickly became quite a star, and he became an arbiter of authenticity quite rapidly. He was the guy. This one's real. This one's fake. It's old technology. Someone's used an acrylic over a painting that's 300 years old. That's balls. Stuff like that.
Fair enough.
And so eventually he started the Orion analytical thing in 2000. And he was often the sole resource for people to come and check out the reality of their
And he would do
paintings.
Like all eras? Because I expected they would be, you get good at a particular era. You might need to, all of the Renaissance people because they had certain techniques and that would come up, or, the moderns or something like that. He can do it all?
Seemed to be a lot.
All right.
And apparently, so we go back to Sotheby's, who bought the lab. In 2017, for Sotheby's, he analyzed more than $100 million worth of artwork before they went under the hammer or went to private sales. So this is the stage I really want to be able to say to you, he flipped and became a forger.
Yeah, or he was all along and he was allowing his works to go through the system, but no.
Well, either no, or he's so good at it that it still has not been uncovered.
Damn.
I know.
That would be an episode.
Well, as I'm reading it, I'm going, come on, man. Come on, flip on me, buddy. Flip on me, buddy. Tell me there's some kind of secret born identity shit, but no. Still. So how did he do it? So when he was doing business, so a painting would come to the lab. It would be given like a bright light examination. They'd move a light around to look at the angles on the surfaces, see if the things have been restored or changed.
Don't just look at it in the dark like they did in the old days.
Exactly.
So you just keep the lights off, and obviously that's a grandmaster. That's beautiful.
You just grab, what is it? Grab the swab across it and see how it tastes. But then you get into photographing it under ultraviolet light, infrared light, X-rays to see what the chemical elements are. And you check these images against other images on the computer, and you look at them against each other and see if there are, anomalies and strangeties.
Like how they did their M's and stuff like that.
Exactly. If the font,
like Van Gogh always does birds with, I don't know.
Well, he used to put a flower and a smiley face over the eye.
Yeah, exactly. No forger could do that.
No one could. No, a 14-year-old girl from the 1980s.
Or boy.
No, it was all girls in the 1980s. There was no gender ambiguity in the 80s. That didn't happen until the 2000s.
Boy George invented it, though.
Oh, that's true. Do you know, I remember that. The first time I saw a Boy George video, the very first video, and it was a Karma Chameleon, and he's up there doing his thing. I remember looking and going, fuck, she's ugly. And then I didn't realize that it was
there you go.
A gentleman. I was a terrible human back then, but I didn't know it.
That's good. I
know. So anyway, under infrared, paintings like browns and yellows and stuff all turn gray, but then you can look for underdrawings to see if things have been painted over or augmented, which doesn't necessarily mean they're fake, but it's something to consider, like, because overpainting and so forth is very common.
Yeah, canvas was way more expensive than every other element in the painting.
Yeah, like to find a canvas mine is a real write your own ticket. But then they go further. So if they might want to look for lead, for example, lead's a classic indicator, it seems, because often people would fuck up. They'd either restore with non-lead paint from an era when it was only there, or if people try to forge, they'd use acrylics and stuff when lead and shitty paint was the period standard. So they'd look for things like that, lead, calcium, etc., different ways to find strange stuff. But of course, not every painting needed to be fully analyzed. So like once apparently Martin could unmask a fake Modigliani, the multiply forged guy, under an infrared light, because he could see a grid. He just kind of waved the light over and went, oh, clearly this dude's drawn like paint by numbers guidance on this. Fucking clown.
Well, but how do we know that Modigliani didn't do a little bit of grid work beforehand?
Well, we ask an expert.
Okay. No,
you're right, he may have, but he probably rubbed it out properly.
I get it. Okay, if you've never done that before, that would be a bit weird.
It would be weird. But also, apparently, if he's got to go deeper, like he can literally do analysis, like he gets tweezers, gets a grain of paint, like a literal grain of paint, puts it under a stereo microscope. I like all of it. You place it between a small rectangle of metal, and then it's held in place between two tiny diamonds.
Why?
Because that's what you need.
When you're speccing out your lab and you're saying to your bosses, "Look, I need the microscope that holds things in place with the diamonds." It sounds like
tiny diamonds.
It sounds like you're making it a little bit fancy.
It does, doesn't it?
And I need the gold around everything. I need lots of.
I need gold leaf. What on? Everything.
Just make it fancy.
That's all I care about. I like Martin says at one point, you don't drink a lot of coffee.
Sotheby's are going to be, maybe they're the kind of people that are convinced by having diamonds around things. That's the kind of world they live in, Of course. Well, one does.
It's exactly. He said he wanted diamonds. Well, of course we'll give him diamonds, small ones. And Martin says apparently you don't drink a lot of coffee before you do that sort of stuff because you're talking single grains, etc.
Okay, but you're not putting it back. Like it's not like you got to preserve it for.
That's why you take the grain, but you don't want to keep picking grains if you fuck it up.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Because enough grains equals a mountain. Have you learned nothing?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That's fine.
Every mountain starts with a single grain of paint. And then, of course, you get to the point where you use a spectrometer and you get these spectral graphs. And he got to the point where he could just recognize what a thing was just by looking at them. He just became so familiar with spectral graphs of different things. But also you could do it much more simply. So there's a sort of a triage system. So if an artist is likely to have been forged a lot, so every Modigliani you check that bugger out. But on the whole, apparently only a small percentage of the thousands of objects that go through Sotheby's go to the lab.
Yeah, okay.
So Martin he'd kind of wander around. He said he looked at them like patients.
I assume there's a sus feel. Like if it's a particular artist who's faked a lot, but there's a lot of stuff that's like, oh, that's a little bit different from what we'd expect.
Something's not right. And of course you'd get a gut feel at some level. If you were so familiar with this stuff, you'd get a feel.
Oh, it'd be interesting as well, noticing what that gut, I bet that in some ways they couldn't describe all of the aspects of the gut feel. It would be based on, some elements of that look weird, maybe for the time, for the history, for the person, for all of those kinds of things. It just feels a bit,
It's like, no, let's look a bit deeper.
You could probably do it with machine learning, actually.
We should get onto that. You got nothing else to do, right?
Oh, that's it. I mean, no.
Sitting around, wasting your time? He said sometimes he'd cruise around doing checkups. So he'd tour the galleries just with an infrared camera and kind of have a little look-see, just wander around.
I wouldn't do that. You go to any gallery and you're not even looking at paintings. You're just looking for fakes.
What are you doing there, sir? I'm checking if you're lying to me. And I'm going to get a class action.
I want my money back on my ticket if I find one fake.
8 million people I've got online.
It's going to ruin your day so much because it ruined my day not very much at all.
Exactly. Cost me $8 to look at something that if I didn't have an infrared light, I would have been delighted by. Sons of bitches. But what's interesting about his stuff is so the processes of what he does, he basically divorces art from the aesthetic. He reduces it to the pure compositions.
Yeah.
So as he put it, he basically thinks of art as like pure matter.
So is he's doing he's looking at this purely chemistry, really. So he's not using any sort of this is out of time for that artist or this doesn't quite match their style or something like that. He's not using any of those sorts of techniques?
Look, I assume so, but a lot of this stuff that I was reading anyway focused on his tech. I mean, of course, that famous painting of Van Gogh's digital watch.
Yep.
That was probably fake.
My new Apple Watch. Isn't that great? Starry sky plus Apple Watch.
It's true.
With
iTunes.
I did a fake Van Gogh in Photoshop a while ago, where a bunch of people in Australia, right wing people, were romancing the idea of coal-fired power, and I thought, let's make a Van Gogh painting of a coal-fired power station, and how beautiful.
Why didn't you not send me that, or is it your tattoo, not mine?
It's somewhere there.
I'm thinking of a back tat. That sounds good. And so they kind of get romantic about him. So, in many ways, he comes closer to the artist than anyone else has, because he's possibly only the second person to think so intently about the materials in the object, the nature of the pigments, et cetera, the properties of the canvas. But of course, art derives its worth from its more, its inspiration, its flashing uniqueness, etc. Martin's, of course, his talent's more common to the forger.
It's all just market.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, indeed. So he's right into it. So in 2018, by 2018, he'd worked so many forgery cases with such success, he became the world's foremost forensic art detective. So he's good. Like, he's really good. There's not a lot of people in this field, but to be this good is unusual. So he's consulted in nearly every major fraud case over the last 25 years. Everyone, often working with the FBI and similar investigators. And at one point, I love this, he taught a 2-day course on some of his skills and techniques. And then he read a book, a translation of a book, Faussaire or something, means forger. It's a French novel written in 2015. And it had a whole bunch of wealth of wisdom and information for forgers. If you want to get hold of antique lead, one character says, then you can just pick up bits of old buildings from around Rome. The same character says that there are dangers from microparticles from your clothes. You must always work in old smocks, never use nylon or the modern apron.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. That's cool. I wasn't thinking you had to go so far. First, you must recreate a whole Renaissance village, and then in the center of it.
That's it, including the fair, including the Morris.
You must have peasants.
Your attitude must become Renaissance. You eschew all technologies. So this French novel talked all about these details, and his characters spoke all about these details. And Martin became convinced that this was basically coming from his work and his course. So it's one of the reasons he stopped teaching, because he was basically giving people forgery information.
Yeah, I get it. It's such an interesting blend. You're right there. How do you get past it? By teaching about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just passing on stuff. I'm just telling stories and facts.
I'm just liking the idea of the people at the back of his classroom just sitting there with notebooks. That's
Keep
great.
talking.
Yep. It's great.
I'll never work at McDonald's again.
Well, look, in a very similar way, how does what is the sports doping authorities? How do they catch sports drug cheats? They're very similar ways of thinking.
I don't think he got into drugs, though.
Oh, it was fun. Yeah. And
how dare you? How dare you impugn his character? So when he was described as he's described as the premier forensic detective working in art, and the accolade comes from people such as John Cahill, who is a New York lawyer who managed heaps of art transactions. And he called Martin, hands down, the best in the business.
He's the best. He's the best.
He's the best. This guy, he's the best. You want the best. But the compliments came from the other side of the fence as well.
Oh, yes.
So here we go to Wolfgang Betracci, who is I go and telling him, but he's a German art forger, and he's notorious.
He's Wolfgang. Of course, he's German.
Betracci.
No one is, there is a law. No other country is allowed to use that name. Only maybe Austrians, but other than that, that's it.
Then how come Eddie Van Halen's son is called Wolfgang, and that's okay?
Oh, he must have been
because
born
he's
in
Eddie
Germany.
Van Halen's son.
He must have been born Wolfgang Van Halen. That's ridiculous.
Well, to be fair, Eddie's a Dutchman, so maybe he's allowed. Dutch and Germans, they're the same people, right? Oh my God, we just lost all our Dutch and German listeners.
No, we lost them at the accent earlier on.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of people. No, he's actually his original name was Wolfgang Fischer, but I'll tell you why it's Betracci later. So he was very good, and he would convince the international art world to buy very good paintings in style of expressionists, surrealists, cubists, you name it, he could do them. Particularly for some reason, a guy called Heinrich Campendonck.
It's a great name. It's great.
Yeah, I mean we've all got some of his artwork around the place. So he's thought to be the most
Campendonck really is you got a new girlfriend and you're like, do you want to go Campendonck? And
does that work for you?
Sounds fun. It's a nice way to spend a weekend.
I like you. You want to come Campendonck? It's also, her name's like Priscilla, and you go, oh, that's kind of nice, Campendonck. Oh, maybe you'd take my name. So yeah, he's been called the most successful, potentially, art forger of all time. To which I reply,
except for the ones you don't know about.
Captured one, exactly. Like, if you're that successful, how come they caught you? But anyway, so apparently Betracci learnt to paint from his father, who was an art restorer and church muralist. He dabbled in painting copies of works by Rembrandt, Picasso, and people like that. So that's what his old man taught him.
Okay.
When he was a teenager,
I can get dabbling.
Fakes.
I can get the
dabbling. Yeah, of course.
But obviously, a lot of art schools start with, okay, let's copy some masters. Go into the museum and copy a lot of aspects, their style, their composition, all of these kinds of things.
Yeah,
I can get how gradually you get better and better at that. It would be tempting.
I'm hearing what you're saying. We need to go to the art school that's attached to our university and say no more copying anything because you're making criminals. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, I am saying that.
I agree with you. So as a teenager, he used to paint fakes of old masters, but not copies. He would paint fake new ones in their style.
Yes.
And sell them at flea markets.
Flea markets? You got no aspirations here. You got no...
He's a teenager. It was amazing he got off the couch.
I get it. You hadn't done the full business model. You've got the make a fake old master flea market. What possible place could I sell it?
I'm going to go drinking tonight, so I'm going to paint a Rembrandt that Rembrandt never did.
I want $23 so I can go to the pub and get the bus home.
So I'll do a quick Renoir. So apparently for the 1970s and 80s, he was in a nomadic, drug-filled, bohemian lifestyle cruising around Europe doing this. Sounds awesome. I'm not going to lie. But during that time, he started painting works by French modernists, German expressionists, because those materials that they would have used were modern and easy to find. So it was less effort. You could just use modern techniques and modern materials.
You don't have to get any of the aforementioned Pope juice.
Exactly. No more Pope juice. So he was particularly good at painting works by people, as it was put here, lesser known German expressionists like Molzan and Campendonck.
Why would you get good at the lesser known ones?
Because less likely to get busted.
Okay, maybe. Yeah.
You got to remember, we've got a big margin on each object you're selling here. We've got a huge margin.
Yeah, okay.
So apparently his Campendonck paintings were so good, he fooled at one point the leading scholar on that artist at the time. Was compiling a catalogue of Campendonck's works and mistakenly included some of Betracci's fakes.
But that's what you want. And then then the provenance is there. It's listed in there. It's hard to get out of things.
I think it's wonderful.
Well, it's a bit like the ages ago we talked about the people that have been listed as dead. And once you've been listed as dead, it's really hard to get undead. But once you're in the catalogue of the legitimate works, it's far harder for people to prove it's not. Yeah,
it's still like you are dead, but I don't think I am. Well, it says here you are. So what do you want?
Sorry, it's in the rules.
Yeah, the book says you're dead. So in 92, after he'd been cruising around, he met his wife. So his wife's name is Betracci, but he took her name. So he changed his name from Fisher to her name. I don't know why.
It's cooler.
Yeah.
Fisher is a great name. Anyone named Fisher, it's great. Betracci's cool though.
Betracci. So then they became partners in crime. So in the mid-90s, they invented a story about a recent inheritance of pre-World War II art collection.
See, the Nazis, you see, they left a
This
whole
is what
bunch
happened.
of things here and nothing to do with us, but we
Can
found
you see
them.
what I'm reading here? Because that's pretty much...
No, isn't it? No.
So his wife's name's Helene. So the story basically said Helene's grandfather, Werner Jägers, lived in Cologne and befriended a Jewish art collector and gallery owner, Alfred Flechtheim.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, look, when Hitler came to power, Flechtheim was forced to flee Germany, so he sold a whole bunch of works to Jäger for cheap.
Okay.
The collection then came to Helene, his wife, and then after Jäger died, there's a bunch of photographs that demonstrated their provenance as well.
Here's a picture with Hitler standing on the box. Right
Exactly.
there. Can't you see?
So this painting's authentic. So then they went to great lengths to demonstrate the authenticity. So at some point they were intentionally blurry and overexposed photographs of Helene's grandmother, which was actually her.
See, this is, again, you get back to the peasant village. Okay, now we need to get an old 18th century camera. We'll take a...
Yeah. What we need is a slightly bombed pre-World War II thing, and then they used old paper and crap, dip it in coffee or whatever you do. They'd buy frames and canvases from the era, like at flea markets and shit, and then reuse them, and the painting sold really well.
Oh my God, it's such a, I get, like of all the criminal enterprises, it's both fun, and the fact that it's non-violent, it's just so nice. It's just so, like, you could make a really wholesome romantic comedy. Not even you need
to.
It's beautiful.
Actually, it's funny you should say that, because some of his paintings, they fetched six-figure sums at auctions, including a Camperdonkle called Landscape with Horses, which was bought by Steve Martin.
Oh, there you go.
Speaking of romantic comedies and stuff, in 2004 for $860,000.
Ah, damn. Sorry, Steve.
I don't know if Steve Martin got his money back. I'm not entirely sure, but I just love that. I'd read some of this material 2 or 3 times, and then I got to the point when, holy shit, I missed that. Steve Martin bought it.
Well, I mean, this is it. There will be buyers for these things, and
there will.
Once you get into objects that are purchasable only by the ultra rich, you start knowing these people. So,
yeah, and no, we'll get into that later.
I know. I got to say, like, if I'm a billionaire, I am spending a shitload of money on art. Like, I am all over that.
Yeah.
I would be buying the most wacky art that I could find.
Oh, I love the idea. If wacky or not, if you just kind of look at something,
anything,
that's just delicious. I just like it. Give me the delicious thing. So by the early 21st century, he'd mastered styles, particularly one of a guy called Ernst. And the leading...
Wait, that was his full name?
Apparently. He's like Madonna.
Ernst. Like,
I am Ernst.
That's not a great, like, I know Madonna is Madonna, but if to have one name to go by, Cher is better, but Ernst
it's just so, it reminds me of a spoof from the 80s. You're ripping off, the German Kraftwerk and all that.
Of course.
I am Ernst.
And he's wearing a turtleneck. He has
being Ernst. Yeah,
a
exactly.
lot of
And the thin black
turtleneck.
glasses. Yeah, like, I am Ernst. And so, leading Ernst scholar, a guy called Werner Spies, or Spies, I don't know, he went on record authenticating The Forest, an Ernst by the forger, and 6 other alleged Ernst paintings, all done by the forger. He's like, no, I'm the leading expert. These are legit. The Forest was bought for €5.5 million in 2006.
Damn.
Yeah. But ultimately, he got busted. They started to notice things were fake. He admitted to forging around 300 paintings by more than 50 artists over 35 years.
Oh, and that would be cool, though. I mean, this is the final thing in your romantic comedy. When you get to come clean and you say, look, damn, I was cool. I fooled all of you. You know, I committed.
You kind of want to, wouldn't you?
Oh.
You just want to be able to go, you know what?
But I'm sure in this kind of crime, there would be an element of show-offerism. Like, it starts with show-offerism. I can fake this. I can copy this really well. And then once you get, you're making the money, of course, the end result is, all right, I'm 80. I'm coming out on my deathbed.
Gotcha 900 times, rich idiot. So apparently after his arrest, he said he'd seen an assortment of technical studies collected by police and the prosecution looking at the art and the provenance and so forth. And he remembered Martin's particularly, our original boy.
Oh, yeah. As in James Martin, not Steve Martin. Yep.
Yeah, not Steve Martin. This guy, sorry, yes, our boy Martin, who's the forger catcher. His reports contain the most accurate results. His reports were factually neutral and without unrealistic guesses. So Martin's science boy. Here's what I can tell you. Here's what I can't. I'm very, very clear. So even in what is allegedly the best forger of all time, respect.
I do love, though. I mean, as if you wouldn't. You're the forger guy. Being the best forger, of course, you would read the reports of your enemy. It's like, it's mouse catcher. Like, it really is.
Yeah,
I want to know what they do. And as I don't know why there aren't more crime dramas that are just based around this, because they're gentle. It's nice.
There might be. How many crime dramas do you watch when, sci-fi's out there? And Ted Lasso. So basically, it's not a low-pressure job. What Martin does is not low pressure. It's there's a lot of money and anger and tension.
And billionaires buying something fake. I wouldn't want billionaires as enemies.
No. I barely want them as friends, depending on what you mean by friends.
Yeah. But
that's crap. I'm trying to sound cool. Are you a billionaire? I'll be your buddy.
No, definitely not enemies. Definitely not enemies. Like friends, fine. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. But I don't want a billionaire as an enemy.
I'll be your buddy. So he tells a few stories and there's a couple of quick tales that part of the stress. So he says there were two questionable gentlemen from Tel Aviv, and they apparently turned up and they pulled a pair of paintings out of architects' tubes. Mm-hmm. They shook them out like they were rugs, and they said, hey, can you confirm these are Mondigliani's? They weren't. He had a client who sent Martin to test a painting at an auction house because he said he wanted to bid on the painting. But he said, on the way, can you stop past this warehouse to assess how good this horrible copy of the same painting is? And what became apparent was the client wanted to know how close to the original the fake was. Yeah, so he wanted to kind of use Martin to see if his forgery would pass. You got another one. This is my favorite. There was a collector who offered to fly Martin to an undisclosed location, have him picked up by a security detail, bring him to examine an old Mexican, I don't know how you pronounce this, stele, Stele, which is some kind of stone carving, allegedly worth $50 million. Uh-huh. The night before his flight, Martin couldn't sleep, so he Googled the collector. He found he'd recently been released from federal prison.
Yeah, okay.
He'd been serving time for weapons charges.
See, you know what? Fuck all of the infrared and all of this. All you need to do is Google the person and see if they're dodgy.
Well, apparently he calls the guy the next morning and said, I'm not going to, I'm turning down the case. And the collector said, did you read about the murders?
One murder. Like, it's legitimate.
Why should that taint me my whole life? Martin says, no, what murders? So it turned out the collector had once been implicated in killing two people exactly over matters to do with these Mexican statues. Well, carvings. Is it the murders? And click.
No, I didn't even get to that. It was the other dodgy stuff I was seeing.
Holy shit, I'm worried now. I know he'd been in prison, but it wasn't for that. So the one that really rattled him, though, the one that really kind of took the wind out of his sails. So it was a bitter legal battle over the fate of a gallery called the Nerdler or Knerdler Gallery. So it used to be New York's oldest gallery. Mm-hmm. But a couple of days
older one was discovered? Like,
no, it had to close.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Because Martin issued a report that concluded a Jackson Pollock there it had sold for $17 million was fake.
Oh, look, I gotta say, I like Jackson Pollock. It's awesome. But if you were going to fake anyone, I can see the technique pretty easily in Jackson Pollock.
Have you watched any sort of docos or descriptions about how he does it or did it?
A little bit.
Way more complicated than I realized.
Okay, all right.
Like I was the same. I was like, it's the classic. My 3-year-old could do that.
No, I don't doubt the talent in what he did, but I just think that faking that may not be the toughest of.
Trickier than the Mona Lisa, yes. I think if I was going to forge a painting, it'd be much more likely to be a Jackson Pollock than anyone who could paint anything identified.
Here you go. He's a stick figure. This famous stick figure by Da Vinci. Didn't you know?
He's pour shit on a canvas. But it turns out this fake thing was just the tip of the iceberg. So over 15 years, the gallery had sourced and sold 40 paintings that were attributed to a bunch of modern artists, and they took in about $80 million. And so there was an ambiguity to the work's provenance, so people started to get suspicious. 10 buyers sued the gallery and its director, and all but one of the lawsuits was settled out of court. But at least 4 of the lawsuits, which carried on for years, the plaintiffs, so the people who are attacking, they hired Martin to test the paintings, and he found them all to be forgeries. My favorite, speaking of Jackson Pollock, was there was a Jackson Pollock where it was signed P-O-L-L-O-K. They missed the C.
I don't think, just in everyone's defense here,
spell a name right.
Even the best of us spell our names wrong sometimes, and sometimes
$17 million. I mean, Pollock probably, I don't know, drank and smoked.
I don't think Pollock was the most healthy living guy that there was. So I think spelling his name wrong might not have been impossible.
But you got to love if that's the one thing you fuck up, you get everything else right. It's like, you spelled his name wrong, you fucking idiot. There are also much more technical reveals about other paintings. So there was a lovely and an anachronistic white paint painted on a painting by a guy called Rothko. Never heard of him either, but it was basically an acrylic paint. You've heard of Rothko?
Rothko's great.
I agree. I love a Rothko, not a forged one though.
I love the forged ones too. They're all great. Just give me more of the big squares.
As long as we got them. So apparently these people fucked up. They used a paint that couldn't have been around in Rothko's time. So in 2013, investigators learned the forgeries had been painted by a 73-year-old Chinese immigrant in a garage in Queens.
Why we always got to exploit the immigrants here?
I hope he did well, because he painted all these things. And then they were put into the Nerdler gallery by an art dealer who said, yeah, you got me. So the FBI eventually raided the garage. They found tubs of this paint that have been on the Rothko.
God, it's got to make all of these art gallery people so much more paranoid. They lived in a very genteel and traditional sort of world for their whole lives. And then suddenly over the last couple of decades, they're realizing, hang on, we are potential victims of huge stings. And, yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. But it turns out until that raid, Martin was put through the ringer in the trial. So until they finally found the guy and found the paint and said this guy did it, he was having the shit beaten out of him in court. So the gallery recruited all kinds of experts to attack him, and they went after him with a vengeance, according to John Cahill, the lawyer who earlier said he was awesome. They say he soiled the evidence. It might have been accidental. It might have been on purpose. Soiled the evidence.
I don't understand what that means.
Fucked with it, messed it up. And they're saying maybe I think contaminated would have been a better word. Did he do it deliberately or on purpose? Don't know, just asking questions. And so they beat him up for a long time. They served 6 subpoenas, and they ended up extracting more than 8,000 documents and emails related to the case. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of documents. So basically, instead of being an expert witness, he was forced to defend himself, his methods, his character, et cetera, et cetera. And they were trying to impeach his whole career and say he was basically horrible and useless. And so according to a guy, Narayan Kandekar, he runs Harvard's Center, a conservation and technical studies center at Harvard, Martin's entire power relies on him being objective, not being part of the story or the situation. He gets under a lot of pressure because people have a lot of money at stake, but he's been very, very brave to stand up and stay on track and say, no, this is what I did. So he's being applauded by other people in the conservation world. And Cahill, the lawyer, goes on to say, look, he's a real Boy Scout. His integrity means heaps to him, so he really suffered. So
I can understand that a Boy Scout would actually be useful in this, because you can imagine the prima donna-ish world of experts, as in like the experts in that artist. So they're all, I know what each of this artist did or something like that. And that might be a little bit prima donna-ish, and it's talking about, their assessment of it. But coming from a very Boy Scouty sort of science world might give a different sort of take.
Absolutely. And that's why they need this guy. I mean, no question that's why he's so good, because he was devoted to the task. Not look at me. He didn't want to get noticed. He didn't want to do anything. Yeah. He was devoted to the task. Or is. He's still alive, last I heard. So basically, he always loved science. He loved the pursuit of truth. So he was deeply distressed when he was attacked with all these personal vilifications, etc. So in 2016, when the clients finally settled with the gallery, apparently he found it really hard to return to his work. He never wanted to do expert testimony again. He just wanted to go away and paint on his own for a while. And he said, it was surreal what happened to me. No scientist should have to go through this, which you can imagine. So he was, of course, stoked when Sotheby's said, I just want to buy your company so he could be cocooned within a larger institution.
Yeah.
He could look at the works before they hit the market. He didn't have to deal with anything after the fact. Everything was fine. And apparently above his desk at Sotheby's, he keeps a couple of sketches of himself from the courtroom.
Oh, I thought you were going to say done by Leonardo da Vinci.
Here's the sketch with Digliani, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But tough. The scientist in him, in the end, he was ultimately, or is ultimately a scientist. But it's interesting, you were saying earlier, art forgery, it's kind of romantic and kind of cool. And this came up. So it seems kind of, a bit of a Robin Hood sort of thing, you're fucking with the rich, kind of giving to the poor. But after Beltraki,
not giving to the poor, just fucking with the rich, just taking from the rich.
Isn't that what Robin Hood did?
And keeping
he
it.
gave to the poor as well.
And keeping it, which is,
I'm half like Robin Hood. What do? I steal from the rich. I'm done. So the general gist of art forgery, people see it as a little bit kind of remote and victimless. Exactly what you were saying.
I'm not saying victimless. It's just that the victims are not the most beloved of people.
Yeah. So exactly what you were saying. So apparently, just after Beltraki was arrested, the forger in 2010, the Frankfurter Allgemein, like newspaper, called art forgery, quote, the most moral way to embezzle 16 million euro.
The most moral way. The most moral. If we're going to list them, and here is our list of moral
Number
and immoral.
one, art forgery.
What was number two? I mean, I'm just asking for a friend. I
don't want to stand out too much. Der Spiegel, so the Mirror, the German paper, noted that unlike crooked bankers, Beltraki hadn't swindled the common man. So again, that same kind of thing, like, you're attacking the rich. But apparently Martin felt differently. He said, look, he'd met so many people who'd been attacked or victimized by crime from art fraud that he quote, developed a gentle bedside manner to break bad news, because he'd seen people who'd used money for their children's education or for putting it, to buy art and then find out it's a fake. So that actually
who is buying fine art for their children's education as this
You don't do that? Why don't you think of your children, man?
I do think of my children, but I don't know how, okay, this will help. And I get, different countries have different ways of paying for education, of course. But
investment. Look, I have a Mod Digliani.
I'm just exactly. I'm a lonely billionaire just trying to pay for my children's education by buying fine art and hoping it will appreciate. Like, fuck off.
Why not, though? You get people who invest in, like emu farms and things like this. Why not? Like, this painting, it's only going to go up. It cost you 90 grand. Like, not all artworks are millions. So.
But not all artworks go up. Like there are, it's not an inherent. It just, you have it and it goes up. Look, okay, I get that art is an investment, but it's not like a factory and it's not like other forms of investment. It's different.
Look, it's fair to say all the artworks I've done have not gone up.
What?
I know so far. I'm not dead yet.
No, they will. Yeah, don't worry. They'll go up after.
Thank you. That's a comfort. So, but I think this is interesting. So kind of the crux of this for me, if we're going to get into the whole science and so. If science has to make something real, like if you need science to make art real, then that's it's an interesting thing to think about. We need art is supposed to be, for itself intrinsically delicious, etc. But yet now we're in a world where science has to authenticate it.
But it's not. I mean, clearly, a whole chunk of the value of art comes from saying this was by this person. Like, it really does. Like, you can look at a painting and then suddenly you're told, this was done by Van Gogh. And people are like, oh my God, that is worth so much more to my eyeballs. Like, previously I was interested. Now I'm amazed. And put this is Da Vinci, this. And it's almost like art is not divorced from society. It's not some intrinsic worth thing. So,
yeah. And this notion of authenticity is the main thing that comes up, obviously, through this story. So, for Sotheby's, the question of authenticity is not just academic; it's particularly important because of huge amounts of money related to it. But then others will say, "Well, does authenticity matter at all?" So, there's an art critic who says, "Look, if a fake is so expert that even the most thorough and trustworthy examination of its authenticity leaves it still open to doubt, is it fair to say it's a satisfactory work of art anyway?"
No, it's not.
Doesn't matter whether it's actually genuine. There's an art critic better than me. They know more about it than me.
But this also goes down to the thing of why do people crowd in front of the Mona Lisa? Like you get to the Louvre and you go, all right, got to go tick off and see the Mona Lisa, and you've seen it 1,000 times. No one is coming to the Mona Lisa seeing it for the first time. You've seen it in pictures, in movies, on all the time, and seeing that, it's not like you're going to see anything new. It's not like
it's not
all
big
you are
either.
doing. All you are doing is getting some sort of authentic experience with the physical object, and there is that line between physical object and actual artist that is just it's all made up. I mean, it's real, but it doesn't matter.
But it's true. It's true. Like, I mean, and one of the ones I like out of this was that Salvatore Mundi painting by Da Vinci that I was talking about earlier, $450 million one. There are people who argue over this. They say, look, it's been reworked, updated, etc., so many times that some people say, look, this is no longer a work by Da Vinci. It's a work of the restorers of the painting.
Okay.
You get to a point where it's like, where does the chair go when you smash the chair? Where's the Da Vinci-ness in this painting? If you get to the point where nothing left has been directly touched by Da Vinci, it looks the same. Maybe they've used authentic ingredients.
I mean, with that, there are clearly significant modern artists who have factories where they will commission a style and then have a whole bunch of apprentices or assistants or whoever they are who will manufacture that series of artworks. Are they of that original artist?
Yeah, and that's exactly the argument.
I say yes, of course. Of course they are.
Of course you do, but see, you're a good-natured fellow who likes stuff.
Yeah, sure.
You're not an angry billionaire who's, sitting alone in his room looking for meaning or whatever you said, misquoting you entirely. I think my favorite was, there was a quote at the end of the major article I read. So in 2 decades running the Met in New York, so Thomas Hoving was the museum's director until 1977, so it was a while ago. But he said he must have examined at least 50,000 objects, and he wrote in a book he wrote called False Impressions, I almost believe that there were as many bogus works as genuine ones that came through my hands.
Wow.
So like 50% of 50,000 or more could have been not authentic, so to speak. I just think it's fascinating, I mean, I love the idea that you get to the point, because I've worked a little bit on the line between science and artists and blah, blah, blah. It's been positive and negative. But it's interesting to see how strong the feelings are on either side. Sometimes the scientists hate the artists hate the scientists. Other times they want each other too much to authenticate each other. It's a very interesting space to play in. And this notion of what's real, what's authentic, and how much that matters, I think it's absolutely wild. So I'm sorry I couldn't tell you Martin turned out to be a forger. I wanted to.
Well, I hope you're going to tell us all we're all real, that we're all not forgery.
Was that a positive-ish story?
It's kind of positive. I don't know.
It wasn't terrible.
Makes me want to be a cat burglar that fakes art. So
look, I'm the cat burglar in this relationship. You can be the forger, but I'm the cat burglar because I'm so dainty.
Yeah, fair enough. I got to grow a goatee. To be a good art forger, though.
That's true. And you have the beret.
I do. The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant, and him, Rod Lamberts.